Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We, Lars and me, Lukas, Zahner, we present to you the next session, but we begin with a short video clip.
Okay, can you hear me? It's red, thank you. Okay, we are sharing this presentation because we have covered different areas of expertise, and I will provide some background information on physical activity through the lifespan. And as you can see, the purple bar is pretty low. That means that we are kind of like inactive. Could you please hand over the presenter? Thanks. And if you look at the common recommendation, 150 minutes of physical activity recommended by the WHO organization, we don't hit those recommendations in general, and that's why we need to tackle this issue with a lot of work and especially new approaches. And we started very early, and this was kind of like the big bang from Lukas at the university.
Early physical inactivity, why is that the problem? We started with an information campaign in Switzerland with different partners. We did that with DVD in German, French, Italian and English. Essential information for parents and a fact sheet, fact book for experts. We look at this timeline of our research. The case study was the first big study in our department, following other studies for children. And we focused additionally on strength and balance training for older adults. But first to the children, please, Lars.
Okay, if you look at the data, you can easily recognize that obesity and fitness decreased and increased respectively, and that we line up a bunch of seniors in about 20-30 years that are not meeting enough capacity to deal with their daily life. That's why we need to promote physical activity and to implement this kind of daily part sustainably. And if we don't do this, we are at a higher risk to develop a variety of diseases from arteriosclerosis to bone health issues and other diseases. And to kind of like kick off these initiatives, we started with the KISS study. It's a kind of very big longitudinal studies to promote physical activity in a school setting. And we tried to include a lot of classes. It was a randomized, cluster randomized controlled trial. And at the end, we had a couple of classes at 9 and 6 schools with more than 500, nearly 1,000 pupils. One group was the intervention group, one was the control group, and what the intervention group received was daily physical education. daily physical education. These were 2 lessons more than their common schedule, and Swiss is way ahead of Germany, for example, where we don't have 3 physical education lessons a week.
Okay, as Lars told, that was these 5 lessons in physical education every week. The 2 additional lessons taught by professional PE teachers. Then the children had short breaks in academic lessons. Then there was physical activity, homework. Children liked that very much. Then we had recess tools, playground activity at schools. And we had education and teaching sessions with teachers and information for parents. That was the whole intervention program from the case study.
And if you look at the results, these are all transformed to set scores so that you can easily compare it. You have 2 types of bars. The intervention group is depicted in light red, and the control group is clear red. And you see there are all changes in favor of the intervention group if you look at the set scores. And there's only one parameter that remains stable, and this was quality of life. Maybe this is not an issue to test within a school setting, so that is not sensitive enough for a 1-year intervention. That means sprint ability, cardiovascular risk scores, even subcutaneous fat, moderate to vigorous physical activity increased, bone mineral content increased, and also the bone mineral density. That means we have improvements in all areas of our body. Cardiovascular, bone health, physical activity in general, and this is good news even if we add 2 more lessons to our school week from a physical activity perspective. If you look at the follow-up, this is also a very interesting picture. If you compare the changes, then you see that there is an increase in aerobic fitness when you look at the 3-year follow-up. That means physical fitness seems to sustain throughout the period of 3 years if we try to do such interventions in school, whereas all the other data seem to return to normal, so that we need kind of like a schedule, a curriculum that implements these kind of additional school breaks. This is a kind of busy picture, but the only interesting thing is if you look at the changes in every tiny parameter, then you can see the changes might be small or not meaningful enough if you look at every tiny detail. But if you look at the curve, then you see that you might shift the onset of a cardiovascular disease to the left side. That means if you just add physical education more often at school, you can maybe delay adverse events in later life. And that's, I think, the most comprehensive new on this issue in terms of all these parameters that has been collected.
Okay, if we take these results, we are going to the Swiss parliaments, and we developed the kids box. This box is on tour. We developed also the youth and sport program in Switzerland from 10 to 20 years children to 5 to 20 years children for additional lessons in school. Then that is the kids box with 24 sheets for physical activity and healthy food. Then we developed a new DVD project for teachers, politics and parents. Followed by a Balabena study was a follow study for kindergarten children, and at the end the spot check, that's a following study for primary school children. But now we make a shift to the older people. Now we focus on strength and balance training with older people.
Just one additional comment. I mean, you can easily sit in your lab and collect data on physical activity, fitness, and some certain aspects of strength and motor skills. But what you really need to convince stakeholders, policymakers, and politicians is to have kinds of hands-on and emotional material to get them convinced about what really is important to do as a next step, to have a more visible impression. And another thing is they have a lot of contact to people. They try to convince them that a certain area is important. But if you can try to stick to their minds with this kind of media, I think this maybe is a more emotional and long-lasting way to convince them. But, and this is important, we try to set up these media evidence-driven or evidence-based. So, I mean, we don't speculate about what is maybe interesting and useful. We try to put this on an evidence-based perspective. Okay, let's now go to the other side of the lifespan, to the seniors. We know that due to aging, we have a dramatic functional decline, and this is maybe due to a decline in lean body mass that we need to tackle. We know that the cross-sectional area of our musculature is decreasing, and this is what we are facing with. Our knee strength, our grip strength is declining through age. Not that dramatic always, sometimes like this logarithmical shape, but it's in fact declining. And if you look at the annual decline, there are differences between muscle mass loss and strength loss depending on men and women, and that's why we need some kind of tailored physical activity recommendations. Another thing besides strength is balance training. We have a lot of opportunities to improve balance performance, and this is a kind of progression model that has been published to easily incorporate this kind of exercise into daily life. You can reduce your base of support, you can modulate your sensory condition, you can stand on an unstable surface, you can close your eyes, you can stand on one foot, and what's happened is that your sway area, this kind of spaghetti here, your sway area is increasing if the task is more challenging, and this can be easy transferable to teeth brushing or standing and having a phone call. And these kind of exercises, if they are challenging and if you incorporate this in a very frequent way, you will benefit from it. This is what I said. You should not be bored by these exercises. You should modify your stance conditions. You seem to profit if you perturb your center of mass. You should have some stress on your muscles. For example, stand on your toes, do some heel stands, and try to change the visual condition. This is published a long time ago, 10 years ago probably. And Catherine Sherrington is also a very distinguished researcher from an epidemiological perspective who tried to put a link between balance performance and fall rates. That's a kind of clear endpoint. How much are they falling if they are doing exercises? She has pooled a lot of trials and found that you can reduce your risk to fall by 21%. If you look at the confidence limits, it's pretty impressive. And if you have a kind of high challenge and you do it 3 hours per week, you can even decrease your risk by almost 40% to fall. And this is, if you look at the costs and if you look at the lack of quality of life, if you suffer from a fall, then this is certainly good news. And your investment is pretty easy for this kind of outcome. Another way to tackle this is using exergaming, and people do have fun doing this stuff. Okay, this was a short video, but these exercises are seemingly very easy, but they are promising if you look at the data. We did a meta-analysis where we compared virtual reality training with a control condition. That's the easiest way to compare studies. the control did nothing, and the others did virtual reality training. And you see the benefits in favor of the virtual reality training are pretty convincing. They are not touching the zero line. Zero line would mean it doesn't matter what you do. Yeah? And if you look at the strong studies, the effect seems to be a little bit going down. And I think this is important, that we have to look at strong studies. That means that they are randomized, they blinded the conditions, and they had a long period of serious assessment procedure and so on. Okay, these are the data. But another interesting thing is what happens if you compare virtual reality with standard treatment. That means the recommended balance training that you can read up in the internet, for example. And then it seems that standard treatment is a little bit more in favor, even if you look at different studies. But if you look at strong studies, that means they did more or less the same compared to standard treatment. It doesn't matter what you do. That means the potential of doing virtual reality training in line with common static balance training is pretty convincing. You can add or you can complement virtual reality to a balance training procedure. Another way to train balance is doing slackline. Maybe you have encountered some slackline in a park, or we did it in a gym. We need to put this bar so that they are not able to fall off. And they had a lot of fun. Beside their training sequences, they were able to chat. This is very important, even for the female ones. And they trained 20 minutes net, only 20 minutes. It's not much, just walking across the slackline and doing some exercises on the slackline, depending on what they achieved before. First they were allowed to walk, then they could stand, then they were allowed to talk, then they could do some squattings, that means knee lift and bendings. And this helps 20 minutes, 12 in each group. And what they improved was only slackline standing. And these findings in seniors, even standing with both legs, left leg, one leg, were similar to the changes we found a couple of years ago when we tested children. That means if we walk on a slackline, if we do exercise on a slackline, we just improve slackline performance. And this seems to be linked to the task specificity phenomenon. That means we need to apply a very multimodal, very complex training regimen, not just only walking on a line or standing on one leg. It needs to be challenging, it needs to be modified. And if you look at a meta-analysis, you see a lot of studies basically done by us were not available on slackline performance. And I will just show you the entire slide. You see there is a gradual decrease of the effects. That means the most pronounced effects were on a slackline. The second pronounced effects were on tasks that were related to the training task. That means this was a kind of like dynamic standing balance performance. It was a swinging platform, and of course they in part improved their performance on the swinging platform. But simply standing on one leg doesn't benefit at all, even if it's a very easy task. Yeah? That means they didn't train it. That's why they did not improve. Okay, and if you're more interested in detailed studies that we have conducted and also the transferable tools that we developed, then you are cordially invited to our afternoon session. I don't know the room exactly, but it would be nice to meet you over there. And now we would be lucky to take some questions.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions? Yes.
Thank you. I have two questions. My first one is, do you involve people with disabilities in sports, and how do you involve? And another one question, what do you think about the children which have medicine recommendation do not be involved in sport? And we know that these children need to be involved in active life, and what we need to do in this situation. Thank you.
First question, we did not involve clinical population. It was a kind of proof of principle studies. These were only seniors with healthy conditions. And your second question, I think it would be promising to also have some modified exercise recommendations for those children that are at a higher risk to develop any condition. But I think this is possible. It just needs to be communicated with the physicians, and it needs to be tuned with the PE teachers and with the academic staff and all the people that are around the children. I think we need emancipation to do this in school and outside the school. But of course they are afraid to do harm, and this is a crucial issue.
My name is Anke van Dam. I'm from Amsterdam, from AVU International, and I have a question. I saw it already in the box that you also do recommendations for healthy food and other healthy lifestyle things. So how do you link your activities, more exercise, to this broader, comprehensive program, I would say, for a healthy lifestyle?
We traveled with this book. We had big stories, big, how can I explain? The teachers in our program, they have a half of a year before we started teaching programs with these boxes and special lessons, and then they make their lessons with the children in the school and in kindergarten.
Maybe one additional comment to your question. I think it's always a matter of responsibility. Some schools are complaining it's not our issue to improve physical activity. Even the PE teachers, they are not agreeing on what physical activity or physical education should cover. Some of them say we need to have social bonding, we need to discover our strengths and weaknesses. Others say we try to improve fitness, and doing 5 lessons each week may improve fitness, but some countries don't have 5 lessons, even don't have 3 lessons, and that's why it's sometimes difficult to put it in a broader frame of physical activity promotion or exercise training. It's one piece in an entire puzzle that we try to improve, and of course we need to have more activities from different perspectives to set it up in a very sustainable way, and that means goals, barriers, individualization, and we're kind of like far away from this at the current stage.
There's one question.
Hi. Just in relation to the same study, the extra classes in physical education, was that over and above the usual program that those students had, or was it instead of classes that they otherwise would have had? And if it was instead of, did you measure any other outcomes, whether there was a cost associated with that?
Okay, I think it was before I came to Basel, but as I remember well, it was an add-on. They received additional PE lessons, and the others stay at the 3 hours a week.
It was also the teachers decide every week. In this week, I make 2 lessons more in physical education and 2 lessons less in other things in the school. The teaching time was the same for every child.
Right, so I suppose what I'm asking then, was there any cost associated with less lessons in, I don't know, academic subjects? Or
Yeah, we
did you look at that?
Yeah, we did that, and the teacher says we have the same program with every child in our school, and these two lessons in physical education haven't an influence of the output of academic things. And we had the response from the children that over 90% from the children like to have another year, 5-time physical education lessons in the school and the other part of the intervention.
And interestingly, if you look on individual level, some of them benefited in academic subjects, as they were able to increase their performance in academic subjects, and this was pretty amazing. And I think there are some other studies outside that suggest that you can increase physical education and you will not lose academic performance, and in certain cases you can improve your academic performance, and this is good news. And if you look at cognition, attention studies, and even cerebral growth, I think exercise will not do harm.
Okay, thank you very much. My proposition is now we have 8 minutes left, that we go over, take a seat there, and have a discussion with all the presenters together. So maybe you should, Lars, Martin, Gabriela. I'm in the middle. So I think we had a very interesting session now, and when I looked at the question you asked from the plenary, it was very clear to me that we have one key problem. The key problem is getting people to be active. This is what you proposed, and more precisely also involving disadvantaged people or populations in our activities. Do you? I know there is no one measure fits all solution, but what are your ideas from your projects to get closer to this problem?
First, I would like to outline that this is a question of dealing with diversity. You can take the daily pass as example. They are very a good example that it's not possible to create daily passes which are reachable for all kind of people. And the second consequence is to deal also with conflicts and with adaptational solutions in daily life. So you have sometimes in a settlement a group which is handicapped for moving, for example, and 10 years later there is another group. Or the demographic change you mentioned is also creating the necessity to develop solutions that are changeable. So what we do in Winter Tour, we have dealt with the Department of Traffic Office, and if they are doing constructions on street, it's just infrastructural construction, they think about could we implement something which stimulates movements of different people, and then you have to go to basic methods like investigating which people are moving around in this neighborhood, which could be the key groups, for example. Also, so dealing with diversity and process-oriented solution.
Thank you. Martin?
I'd like to add one small thing. Ingrid, I liked your question about like potential costs of like getting more physical education on academic performances, for example. I thought it interesting in our pilot study with a school. That's an inner city school where actually there is the guidelines from parents that the children are not allowed to go by bicycle to that school. So we have a problem, and then that school is a very active school and is very active in promoting physical education. So I think they're one of the few schools in Germany that have everyday physical education. But it comes as a cost, I would say. They're compensating that, of course, active travel is almost like kind of neglected. It's like, okay, we've checked that, we have the physical education, like we can really like kind of go away from like the problem, like how can actually how can our children walk to school? And I think that's of course I think a problem where we could really like should actually work together. Like how can we as well promote active travel to school? For example, by connecting green infrastructure, connecting open spaces in a better way. Because I think the kind of and you know that better than I do, that kind of walking to school, of course, has a lot of benefits as well, and kind of like how the kids are able to navigate and so on and so forth. So that was one comment. Another comment about your question, inequalities, which is of course in urban development a big aspect as well. And I was wondering about your project because one issue that is very unequal is like how walkable are our neighborhoods, and there's a big difference between suburban structures, of course, and inner city areas. So, of course, one ingredient is like super dense neighborhoods, big building densities, good street network, and so on. Is that okay if I turn the question back to you? Like, do you have any experience on, let's say, more suburban developments and how make open spaces more active there?
The other municipality we have as a case study, Dubendorf, is a agglomeration, a classical agglomeration community, but I think we have really that's a specific focus of Switzerland, and that the densification is just the one problem. So I think it's another view on if you are in Switzerland or in other counties. So really there are some agglomeration spaces, but there is really also a question to communicate. For example, if you have a recreation area which is at the border of settlements, that you communicate to families with children, they never go out, that it is reachable. Here can the schools, for example, help, or specific actions of social work, youth work are involved, and that is what we are doing in our projects. We work together with social work, youth work, and communicating really that also spaces in neglected areas, in not densely lived areas are attractive for movement and sport.
Okay, Lars and Lukas, what are your ideas about getting people involved? I mean, your vision of your project is more really population oriented, so it should be implemented in all over Switzerland, and very clearly. But we had the question about disadvantaged pupils. What can we do for this population?
I think there are some good initiatives that try to increase, kind of like disadvantaged people into common schools or into public schools, and I think we have to go this road. But we came from an exercise physiology perspective, expertise, and I would encourage people to come together. And if I remember the first talk about deliberate democracy, I think we need to set up goals and detect barriers and try to stimulate people, stakeholders, to contribute to have a healthier and more active environment, even in school, or even in active transport or active breaks, whatever it could be active. And then I think we can easily take the less fortunate or the disadvantaged people with us. What we came to is more individualized, tailored behavioral change techniques based on the setting we are working with. This is, I think, the key we detected in the last years.
And additional, I think, to have fun at the movements, that's the key point for children, to integrate them in the group or to exclude it.
Thank you very much, Lukas. This was, I think, a really very important statement now in the end. I think the most important thing is getting meaning to people, that the environment counts. This may promote change, but in the structure around them, this may also promote change in their individual lives. And I think the meaning is really the important part, and with democracy methods or other methods of participation, we can get closer to this goal. So thank you very much, all the presenters. Thank you, the public here, for your participation. It was a very lively discussion, and thank you very much. The next point now in our program is the lunch, but not only the lunch, but also the poster session. So I invite you to be active at the lunch, but also at the poster session, and to discuss the excellent work you see there. Thank you very much.